Hello, good afternoon. My name is Joseph Valentonetti, and I'll be your host for this version of Inside Leisure World. We're lucky today to have a couple of guests with us from the writers group in Leisure World, Andy Kimbrough and Pat Lay Wilson. They've written some books and they'd like to tell us about them. Let's begin with Pat. Pat, can you give us a little of your background, a little history about yourself?
I was born in Bell, California, the only person ever born in Bell, California. I've never met another one. Grew up in Southgate until I married. Native Californian. In my adulthood, I was a puppeteer for 41 years. And I moved to Leisure World 6 years ago and began writing more than I ever had time for before. And I really enjoyed every moment of it.
Can you expand a little bit on the puppeteer thing, about the kinds of shows that you used to do?
I began right at the point where people were hiring entertainers for their birthday parties. And I owned the city of Corona in those days. I did hand puppets. I studied magic and face painting also. I wrote my own scripts, made my own puppets. I had about 300 puppets in my repertoire when I was all through. And I spent every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, doing birthday parties primarily. I did libraries and preschools, and a roller rink, and a gas station, and I was also in the first Muppet movie. I was younger and skinnier, and I played the back half of the camel.
We were all younger and skinnier.
In the first Muppet movie, yes, it was a delight.
Andy, how about you? Could you give us some background about yourself?
Well, I have been several different professions. I've been a plumber's apprentice in high school, 4 years in the Navy, a few years in the electronics industry, and ultimately in the automated welding industry as an engineer and exec and ultimately CEO. I had a mild heart attack and moved to an island off the Carolina coast in '96 to slow things down a bit, and ran a charter boat there for 7 years.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And retired for the first time when I left there, and spent 5 years in Indiana. And we discovered Leisure World about 2 years ago, and knew it was a perfect fit for us. We moved a year and a half ago, and I've finally been able to get back to doing what I've done off and on over the years, and that's writing. I've been an insatiable reader since I was about 11. In my business life, I did a lot of national and international travel, and I would typically go through 3 books making a coast-to-coast flight. And I came to the conclusion that I could write as well as a lot of the stuff I was paying good money for particularly science fiction.
When you do a lot of reading, that often
Yes.
Is one of the facts that emerges.
I started writing just to amuse myself. Had a novel that I was probably 90% ready to think about publishing, but it was near-term science fiction, and the breakup of the Soviet Union destroyed the first part of my plot. So I had a business trip scheduled.
Those devils.
Yeah. I had a business trip scheduled to Japan for 3 weeks, and having been there several times, there's not much you can do if you're not on an expense account, either being entertained or entertaining, because it's hideously expensive. And I had a small computer with me, and I decided I'd do a little writing. And having been burned in the near-term science fiction, I started writing another subject I'm passionate about, and that's historical military fiction.
Does that have anything to do with your time in the Navy?
Yeah, I was stationed in Bremerton for a year and a half, and it was the main battleship service and repair yard during pre-war and post-war times. And I got to walk through a lot of the big old shops and see some monster pieces of equipment. And so it formed a backdrop for the story that I started in 1990. I finally got it finished in July of last year, and published it as an ebook first, and then in October as a printed version.
And what's the name of your book?
Name of the book is
Can you hold it up for a
sure.
second?
It's BB39, and it's a story about people rather than furious battles. It's about a group of young men from a little town in the Southwest that joined the Navy in 1938, and they all end up stationed on the USS Arizona, BB-39. The first half of the book is a story of their lives up and down the West Coast in the peacetime Navy. The last half of the book is the story of the 3 survivors. And the events of the time drive their own lives and affect their loves and their careers. And it actually stretches into the 90s. And an accident near the Wailing Wall in Israel starts another chain of events that brings redemption, Twilight lovers reunited, and a Siberian POW rescue.
You got the Russians back in there anyhow.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you see as the audience for this book, Andy?
Probably anyone that's interested in military history. It's about the greatest generation, and it's not a chick flick. It does have some love. The characters, I think, are pretty vivid. It's a story that I think anyone that's got an interest in that period and that era would find it a good read.
Okay. Pat, let's talk a little bit about your writing.
Well, I've been writing since I was a child also. I won a $10 prize when I was 10 years old for a poem about the American flag, and I wish I still had a copy of it. But I've taken several classes in writing, and I've had luck publishing in various magazines. I've sold short stories to children's magazines and poetry. I sold 3 confession stories, I've got to confess, and just various things like that. So to have a book for our first book fair, I produced Lola, A Lady of Leisure. And the reason is I collect paper dolls. And I have been since 1970, and I have over 700 paper doll books. I don't know what I was thinking. 14 file drawers full of paper doll books. But anyway, this is Lola, and it tells of her travails at Leisure World. She joins the garden club. She goes to ballroom dances. A man moves next door, so she bakes a casserole. She does hula, ballroom dancing, and at the very end, she meets Waldo, her husband-to-be. So this is a typical paper doll book with paper. You can cut out the clothes and dress the doll. Her name is Lola, and she's very happy to be at Leisure World.
Do you have any idea, you must have some idea of the history of the paper doll?
Oh gosh, they are as old as paper. And they haven't been dolls for too many years. In fact, in the early years, they were not dolls for children. They were from fashion magazines to show the latest Parisian and English costumes. And they began going after the Civil War in the U.S. And the heyday of paper dolls was probably the 20s, 30s, 40s, into the 50s, until Barbie came along. And little girls had a real-life fashion model, and they had no more use for paper dolls. There is a whole paper doll industry, but it's mostly for adult collectors. You can buy several versions of the president and his wife and his family are now paper dolls. The Supreme Court has a paper doll book out, and they're all in their underwear. Oh, it's priceless. So there are a lot of spoofs in paper dolls also. But if you go online and look up paper dolls on eBay, you'll be absolutely astonished how many paper dolls are still out there.
That is amazing. And who do you see as the audience for this
For
particular
my
book? For your particular
Leisure
book?
World ladies, without a doubt. Men don't know what paper dolls are.
Well, they will now.
Well, see, when I was a child, when many of us were children, World War II, the only toys we had were paper, wood, and a mixture of sawdust and glue. And we had no metal, we had no bikes, we had no skate keys, we had no roller skates, we had paper. And you could go to the dime store with your dime once a week and you would find 10 or 20 new paper doll books to buy. Take them home, cut them out diligently. Little girls, you learn to use scissors. Today's children have no idea what scissors are, I don't think.
Or knives and forks.
True.
Let me ask you, Andy, why do you write?
It's kind of a passion. It's something I put off until I had time, and too many years, and I've got a lot of it pent up in me. I've published 3 books last year, and I'm working on a sequel to one of them now. And the publishing industry has changed so that a unproven writer can get books into print or as ebooks, which is a major growth industry in writing, and it makes it easy to do. And
Would you be able to say what you get out of writing other than just words on a page? Like if you sit down for an hour and you write a couple
I made
hundred words.
$600 last
do you-
year.
Yeah, okay, that. Any
That.
personal kind of satisfaction?
Personal satisfaction, and again, it's the stories kind of take on I don't have any idea where they're going to end up when I start
Here
writing,
we go. Okay. Yeah.
and it's almost like reading a story because it just comes at me.
It seems to flow from you from some well
I'll,
that you didn't know you had.
I'll dream about them and
Okay.
the storyline and write about it the next day.
Okay. Let me ask you the same thing, Pat. Why do you write?
Because I have to. Because I feel incomplete if I'm not writing. Even in those days where I had a husband and 3 kids and a career doing puppetry, I was still fitting and writing when I could. Yeah, it's fulfilling. One of my biggest joys is poetry, and it comes very easy to me. I have no idea how, but maybe the years of puppetry gave me this rhythm and rhyming abilities. So I just enjoy it very much.
Okay. Let me ask you like kind of almost a philosophical question about writing.
Okay.
Do you consider it to be an art or a craft?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's
Good
both. I think you have to know how to do anything, how to play tennis. You have to know the rules and the regulations, and once you know them, you can bend them at will. But it's an art too. I think some people love to write and aren't professionals but get a great deal out of it. I think all of us love seeing our names at our work in print. I get a real kick out of that.
Andy, will you take a stab at that?
She hit it very well. Anything I say would be an afterthought, I think. I enjoy it, and it's something that I'll continue to do. I do have other distractions, but this one is my favorite one at this time in my life.
Well, one of the things that happens when you take on any kind of creative activity is there are surprises along the way. What surprising things did you learn about in writing this book?
HTML programming is, even though I've done software before, is frustrating.
Did you learn things about your story that you hadn't known when you sat down to begin the book?
Yes.
Like what kinds of things?
I think I developed more confidence. You know, I right away and put it away for some time and come back to it. I read some of the stuff I wrote back in the 70s just as an exercise, and you know, it's again comparing it to some of the stuff I pay good money for. It's not bad,
Mm-hmm.
and it's given me more confidence to keep pushing myself.
Pat, would you like to take a try at that? What surprising things do you learn from your writing?
Well, the same as with Andy. When you're right, I have written a book. I've written my memoirs as a children's book, and the way that a character can come in and just steal the show. A minor character will demand to be in the spotlight, and you have to just step back and let them have their way. And that's a real joy when that happens. You go on left turns you never thought you were going to go on, but it's going to happen when you get immersed in your writing. I was writing a confession story one day back in the 70s, and my husband came home early, and I felt ashamed of myself. He caught me doing something. I was just writing a story, but I was so totally immersed in it, I got lost in it, and that happens.
Can you describe for us, Andy, the protagonist in the book, the hero? What is it? What does he confront? What are his what's his dilemma?
Well, the major character is a young man that falls in love with a girl in Seattle during one of their yard periods, and they plan to get married. And his best friend, after Pearl Harbor, they're both on destroyers, and his best friend is a radioman, and he got put ashore to go fix a radio for a coast watcher. And they're watching from a mountaintop as a battle develops, and he sees the main character's ship be blown away completely by a Japanese cruiser firing point blank at it. No survivors, nothing but an oil slick. And 6 months later, when he's able to get back, he returns to Seattle on leave and has to tell the fiance that her man is not missing in action. He saw him killed, and because of that, she goes off the deep end, and they end up embroiled. And he spends his 30-day leave with her. He goes on to school, and the same day that she finds out for sure that she's pregnant, she gets a letter from her former fiance that he was on a different ship, had been transferred just before the battle, and been seriously injured, and he's been in a hospital all this
Twist in
time.
the plot, in other words.
So, needless to say, the best friends are fractured. And
Yeah. Interesting idea. Good. And can you give us something about your? Well, I know it's a picture book, a paper doll book, but you have to be basing it on some kind of a character, some kind of a sense of a person who has.
Well, she's named after my mother, who was Lola May. And it's just a typical woman who lives at Leisure World and her activities. But I can share a peak moment, if you like, about puppetry, which I cherish.
Okay.
I was doing Punch and Judy, which was my stock in trade. I did it a lot at a school. And the kids were all third grade and down. And it was one of those shows that was magical. Everything worked. There was electricity in the air. You could just feel the excitement. And I'm progressing with the show, and here's Punch, and here's Judy, and here's the baby. All of a sudden, I forgot Punch was a puppet and waited for him to say his own lines. For that magical moment, he was alive on my hand. And then, of course, I lost it after that, but that was a really nice moment.
Imagine how he felt.
It was great.
Andy, do you have a short piece in your book you'd like to read for us?
yeah, I think I can read one section. Excuse me.
Is there? You have articles as well, Pat, or things from other books, or even from that book that you'd be able to read
Poetry
as well.
and children's stories and just a smattering of things over the years. I have a whole stack of magazines that I've been published in, and like I say, it's fun to see your name in print. And sometimes I pay 3 cents a word, ooh, and that's very rewarding.
Yeah, that's how Charles Dickens made his living. Writing the same sentence over and over and over. Paid by the word.
But he rearranged the words so well.
Yeah.
That he did.
Okay, Andy.
Okay, this is from chapter 9, which is titled Day of Infamy. 0330. Bill woke up early Sunday morning to stand a 0400 to 0800 watch. As he made the rounds of the forward powder magazine, recording temperatures, his thoughts focused on the prospect of quiet morning, doing some more fishing. 0630. Greg woke, and after a quick breakfast, he climbed up to the main top to start studying again. 0700. When Lewis finally got up, he stumbled up to the mess deck, got a cup of coffee. He carried it down to the main deck and lit a cigarette. He sat down to think about the day and again read the latest letter from Isabella. 07:45. Eddie woke up to the rattle of the hangar door, rolled out of the cot, and walked over to the door. Pop Travis was hungover and pissed that Eddie had not made coffee. 07:52. Greg heard the explosion on Ford Island. He stood up, looked out through the viewport, and saw a number of aircraft over the harbor. A column of smoke hung over the field at Ford Island, and the chatter of machine gun fire cut through the still morning. 07:53. Greg called the quarterdeck and was told they had also seen the planes. 07:35. The air raid siren started wailing. Greg ran for his general quarters duty station on the port director for the 5-inch 25 anti-aircraft guns. He could hear the pounding of the 20mm firing somewhere. 07:56. When the alarms went off, Lewis dropped his cigarette in the butt kit, grabbed his shirt, and ran for a duty station at the forward distribution room. He could hear the dull thud of heavy explosions as he ran down the ladder through the armored main deck. 07:57. Already at his general quarters station, all Bill had to do was put on his helmet and sound-powered phone headset. Circuit discipline was gone, as everyone demanded to know what was going on. With a bellow, Bill stopped the turmoil on the line and restored the proper communication procedures. 07:58. Liz woke John Lee up screaming, "They're bombing Pearl Harbor." He stumbled into his pants and looked out the window to see a black column of smoke rising from the direction of Ford Island. The sky was full of strange aircraft and a few streams of tracer bullets. 07:59. Eddie was finished taking a crap when he heard the rumble of several planes. He looked through the door of the outhouse to see what kind they were. They were moving low and fast, and they were firing machine guns into the hangar and the steerman. It erupted into a fireball as the bullets stitched a path into the fuel tank. 0800. Greg reached the port director first. In less than 3 minutes, they were manned and tracking targets. Unfortunately, they were all inside the minimum range for the fuse settings. The 5-inch guns were firing, but the projectiles were bursting beyond the incoming planes.
Okay, Andy. Thank
Good
you.
enough.
Let me ask you, Pat, to respond to that. Can you respond to the passage that he just read? What did you get out of that?
I got out of that, the very beginning of my children's book begins on the day Pearl Harbor was struck. And it shows the children and their parents driving home from Uncle Jim's house and hearing about it on the radio, and how Pearl Harbor changed everything in that instant for the United States. And yet things were the same, along with being different, along with the rationing. There was food available. I think the biggest change was when mothers went to work. Mm-hmm. And before Pearl Harbor, many women did not work out of the house. So that was a pivotal moment for both of us, I think, and anyone who was alive during that.
So your writing creates quite an image in the mind. Mm-hmm. Thanks for reading to us.
Thank you.
Will you read something for us, Beth?
I'd love to share one of my poems, and this was in a magazine. It's called, well...
What, can you tell us what magazine?
It's called Looking Back. It's a reminiscing magazine, and they have stories and anecdotes about growing up in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. But I heard this joke at my Judy's exercise, her chair exercise on Friday morning, and she told us a joke, and I loved it. So I hurried home and put it to print. Shall I?
Yes, please.
It's called Driving Me Nuts. The little old lady climbed into her car and fumbled her keys from her purse. Her day had not been going too well, and it was about to get worse. "I'll put on the radio," she said, and reached out to turn it on. But the buttons were missing, the bright dial too. My radio is gone. And my new GPS, the Christmas gift from her favorite daughter and son, it's gone, she shrieked, astonished and shocked. She sat there, thoroughly stunned. She reached for her key and took a deep breath, but there was no hole for the key. "They stripped my car." She was frantic now. "What will become of me?" "Oh, Lordy," she screamed. "The brake pedal's gone." She couldn't help but moan. "This is going too far," she finally said, and grabbed up her cellular phone. It didn't take long for the cop to arrive. He listened to all she said. She told the man exactly what happened. He slowly shook his head. He closed his notepad and chuckled a little, and walking back to his beat, "Lady," he told her, still shaking his head, "you're sitting in the back seat."
All right. Do you respond well to that, Andy?
Well done.
I love writing it, yes.
Let's try something here. I don't know if you know what an elevator pitch is, but an elevator pitch
Yeah.
is something that, imagine you're in the first floor of an office building, you get into an elevator and you realize the other person you've gotten in the elevator with is the most famous literary agent in the world. And being signed up by this literary agent would take your career skyrocketing. You'd be famous overnight. And you just saw that he pressed the button for the third floor. So you have 30 seconds to tell him about your book. Give me an elevator pitch of your book.
My book is a story about the greatest generation. It provides an up-close and personal look at the lives of real people, not admirals and captains, enlisted people in the battleship Navy of the 1930s and early 40s. It gives you a look at the cities of Seattle, cities of Long Beach, Los Angeles. It gives you a hard look at the day of infamy.
Okay. It's the third floor.
Ding.
Okay, now you're on the first floor. Can you tell, what would you tell this agent?
We learn about elevator pitches at writers' conventions. I belong to the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. And they teach us there, because you're there with agents and editors, and we do have these, even in the bathroom, you have a chance to spill your book. But I would tell them about Lola, that women at Leisure World all played with paper dolls and know what they are and love to cut out dresses. And she would be an instant bestseller because she does all the things that women long for when they move to Leisure World, including finding a man.
That's good.
Good.
All right.
Better than mine.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Let me ask you a couple of other questions. Do you prefer fermented or distilled?
Fermented.
And you?
What?
What? Fermented, wine or liquor? Or do you not drink at all?
Wine. Oh, I drink wine, yeah, not
All right,
distilled.
so
Goodness.
in this group of writers, wine is the high point.
Yeah, especially, except $2 Chuck is now $2.50 Chuck. Damn.
All right, we've got about 1 minute left. I want to take a second to thank John and June of John's Philly Grill in Seal Beach for providing snacks for us and a lunch to eat. I want to thank the crew here in the studio, Rob Roy on sound, Dick Davis, Joe Osuna, Ray Jarris, and the heart and soul and brain and brawn of the operation, Robin Fort Leakey. Let's thank my guests, Andy Kimbrough, author of BB 39, and Pat Lay Wilson, author of Lola, A Lady of Leisure. Thanks for watching. If you see us around the campus at Leisure World, give a wave. See you later. Thanks for coming. It's been great.
We enjoyed it.